Season 4, Episode 162. Why We Can't Keep Commitments. All right. Yo. Welcome back, tribe. Welcome back. I'm your host, Sebastian Hernandez, and you are listening to the Ignite the Spark Within podcast. So, welcome, right? So, what is this about? This is where we bridge the gap between the life you're living and the life you know you're capable of. Yeah. And today we're going to be talking about something that came up in one of our integration circles, right? And we started to talk about the topic of commitment. Yeah. And why is it so hard to commit to something, right? Like, and yet, ironically, by the end of that integration circle, people were actually making real commitments. Yeah. And so let's identify, like, what does a commitment actually mean, right? Because oftentimes there's a fear of commitment. Now, keep in mind, that we're not talking about commitment necessarily in a relationship. I mean, that is part of it, right? But it's about more than that, right? It's like the fear of, or I guess the commitment to actually committing to doing something. Yeah. And it's about the relationship that we have with our own word, right? Now, let me ask you something. When was the last time you broke a promise to yourself, right? And not necessarily to somebody else, but to yourself, right? Like, when was the last time you broke a promise to yourself? And maybe it was going to the gym. Maybe it was the meditation. Maybe it was a boundary that you told yourself that you were going to hold on to, right? Or a project that you were going to start. Like, you said it, you didn't do it. Yeah. And I bet that if your boss said, "Hey, I need you to be here by 8 in the morning," you'd be there, right? So what is that? That's the gap. Like, why is there a gap between how committed we are to external demands versus how committed we are to our internal promises? And that's exactly what we're going to be exploring today. And by the end of this conversation, I want you to walk away with a real commitment, one you can actually keep. Yeah. So let's spark that ignite and get started. Woo woo. All right. So let me start with something that came up in the circle that was like a full revelation. And it started with a simple question: what is commitment? Now, again, people said all kinds of things, right? It's a promise, it's an agreement, it's a contract with yourself or another person, right? Like, those answers are all relatively close, but they're not exactly it. Yeah, like, not exactly, right? Like, there's a collapse. And the confusion between there's an agreement and then there's commitment. And I would argue, like, this is probably the source of so many dysfunctions in our relationships, right? Because, and not just our relationships, in our business, in our lives. So let's get clear about this, right? First of all, an agreement. An agreement is the what? It's the terms. It's the structure. It's the I'll call you at 3 p.m. It's the we're going to meet on Tuesday. It's the when I'm upset, I need space before we talk, right? Like, the agreements defined the playing field. It's the contract, whether it's verbal or written, right? Now, a commitment is the energy you put into fulfilling the agreement. Yeah, like, that's the intent, that's the will, the showing up, not because someone's watching, right? But because that's, like, there's a consequence, but, or necessarily not because there's a consequence, right? But because it's your word in the matter. It's like, it's your word. Your word has weight. And here's what's wild, you guys. You can have one without the other, right? Like, you can have an agreement without a commitment, or you can have a commitment without an agreement, right? Like, you can have an agreement with no commitment. You show up, you technically do the thing, but you're not in it, right? You're going through the motions, and the other person feels it, even if they can't necessarily name it. And you can have commitment without a clear agreement, right? Like, you care, you show up fully, but you and the other person have completely different ideas of what you're actually committed to. And that's where the betrayal happens, not from malice, but from two people committed to two different things that were never spoken out loud. Yeah. So someone in the circle brought up the analogy, right? And I love this analogy, right? And it's like the difference between the chicken and the pig, right? And so let's say that the chicken and the pig, they're about to open up a breakfast restaurant. They're going to open up a breakfast joint. Yeah. Eggs and bacon. Yeah. The chicken is involved, right? Like she donates the eggs, but the pig, man, that pig is committed. Yeah, because the pig gives everything. Yes, that's the distinction. And you got to identify, are you the chicken or the pig in the commitment? Like, are you involved, contributing from a safe space, or are you actually committed, like skin in the game, all in? Now, here's the thing about agreements. Yes, when they're clear, they create freedom, not restriction. Freedom. Because once everything is on the table, like once you know what we're both signing up for, we have the freedom to play full out. Like we know what we can count on and what we can't. And there's no room for assumptions to grow into like resentment, right? Because we're crystal clear. Now, I've said this many times and I live by it. I rather be surprised than disappointed. Yeah. And so how do I do that? I stop assuming and start asking, right? Start saying, like, here's what I'm committed to. Here's what you can count on me. Yes. Here's what I can't promise. And I'll let the other person do the same. Because here's what happens here's what happens without clear agreements. Yes. And then there's the assumptions that fill in the gap, right? And assumptions become later, as in Spanish is tarde o temprano, right? Sooner or later. There you go. That's the one. Sooner or later, right? Assumptions become expectations. Yes. And expectations, when they're unmet, they become resentment. And resentment becomes distance and eventually disconnection. So here's your first reflection. Yeah. I want you to think of a relationship or a situation where there's been a repeated friction, some type of disappointment or resentment, right? Now, I want you to think. See if you can actually recall what are the actual agreements that I think exist in that situationship. Yeah, that thing, that scenario. Question then becomes is, does the other person know what the agreements are? You see, this happens all the time, and I want you to think about it. Like, where have I been operating on assumptions instead of clear agreements? Because again, many times the other person doesn't even know what we're expecting from them. They're often under the pretense of like common sense, right? And by now, we all know that common sense isn't that common. And look, on the same token, like I invite you to ask yourself, like, where am I committed to something that was never actually agreed upon? And that happens as well. Yeah. So let's pivot, right? So let's talk about something necessary in this conversation. And that is, let's talk about limits. Yes, because you can't necessarily talk about commitment without talking about limits. Yes, like and yet it happens all the time, right? And if you don't know why, right? Like I want you to think about this, right? And here's why. Every time you say yes when you actually mean no, you're actually betraying your own commitments. Like you're actually betraying yourself. Now, I want to say that again. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you're actually breaking a commitment to yourself. And when you break that commitment enough times, you actually stop trusting yourself. Did you know that? And let me tell you this. When you stop trusting yourself, it becomes very hard to show up fully committed to anything or anyone. Yeah. So in our integration circle, we actually explored this. Like, why does it cost us so much to say no? Like, why is it so difficult? Why is it so hard? And some of the folks, they got real, right? Like someone shared that they still can't say no to their mom, even at the age of 40. Right. Someone else talked about saying yes to everything at work and they build this resentment. Someone shared how they spend years overextending in relationships, giving, giving, giving without ever setting limits. And then one day, yes, they did. And guess what happens when we finally put limits when we haven't? People get shocked. Everyone. Because no one sees it coming, because that's the pattern. You see, we don't say no, so we accumulate. We let things pile up. We're permissive, yes, with others and with ourselves until one day we fucking explode or collapse or disappear. And then we blame the situation when really the moment we needed to speak was way back months ago, way back years ago. So again, why don't we say no? And here's some of the few patterns that surfaced up, right? So one, fear of consequences. Yeah. How many times have you ever experienced like, if I say no, then they may not like me. They'll get mad. They'll leave. Yeah. They'll think I'm a bad person. And so consider that to a degree, we've actually been trained, like many of us from our childhood, that love is conditional. And it's conditional based off compliance. If I obey, I get loved, right? Like this is what programming looks like. When we say yes, I get loved. But if we say no, I lose that love. That program runs deep in a lot of us. Yeah. Number two, the guilt trap. Now, get that this one is sneaky because it sounds like they've always been there for me. How can I say no? Or if I don't do this, I must be ungrateful. Yeah, so we end up saying yes, not from a place of from a place of love or like genuine desire, but actually from a place of feeling in debt. Yeah, like I have a debt to this person, so therefore I have guilt from not wanting to seem like I'm a bad person, and so therefore, fine, I'll do that. But that's not a yes, you guys. That's a prison, right? Number three, we never actually learned the language. Yeah. And what I mean by that is some of us, we never really grew up seeing healthy like limits being modeled. Like we saw people, yes, that either complied or they fought. Like there was really no middle ground. No, I love you and this isn't working for me. So we default to compliance because we don't know any other way. But here's what I want you to understand, you guys. You ready for this? Your no is not a threat to the relationship. Your no, held with clarity and love, is actually the most honest thing you can actually offer. You know that? Because when you say yes to everything, you're actually not being generous. You're actually being unclear. You're building up a version of yourself that isn't even fucking real. And eventually, you're going to flip. You'll distance yourself, you'll resent, and the other person will probably be clueless, won't even know why. But here's the thing, when you start holding your limit clearly, calmly, something beautiful begins to happen. You see, you give the other person permission to hold theirs. And look, think about it. Like, I'll speak for myself. When I meet someone who holds their limit with grace, not with aggression, not with apology, but with grounded, clear, like, this is where I stand energy, I trust them more. And when women do that, oh man, that's actually quite sexy. It's quite attractive. Like that alphaness, that, ooh, like I know what I want, my boundaries, I'm clear. And because I know when they say yes, they actually mean it. And when they say no, they mean that too. And I can work with that. Yeah? Like, what I can't work with is the person who says yes all the time and then doesn't fucking show up. Like, what the fuck? You should have just said no, right? Like, one thing's like some of the things that's something that came up in the circle as a reminder, right? And it was that a no doesn't need to be decorated. Yeah? Like, for instance, not I can't because, or not I would, but no, just saying no is enough. Or that doesn't work for me. And then full stop. Because remember, our no is actually a complete sentence. So here are some questions I want you to ponder on. I want you to think about this. Yeah. Like, first of all, where are you saying yes when you really mean no? I want you to like look in your life currently, like in the last 7 days. Where have you been saying yes when you really meant to say no? And I want you to be on the lookout on how we want to like justify our choice. Yeah, but, oh, but, nah, you didn't want to do it. Just be honest with yourself. And look, consider that there's a fear. Like, what are you afraid would happen if you actually held your limit? Like, what would happen? Or what would be avoided by being compliant? Because that's also one of the things is in order to avoid the drama, in order to avoid the fighting, in order to avoid the nonsense, I would just be compliant. But that ain't fucking power either. And the last thing I want to invite you to think about, right, is I want you to think of one limit that you've been wanting to hold that you just haven't. Like, who would you put that limit on? And what exactly would you say? Now, here's a tip, right? And I invite you to actually write that conversation out. Like, even if you never actually deliver it, just to see what's been living inside of you. Let it out. Here's the mantra. Write it out to let it out. Yeah? So, next topic, right? So this next conversation, yeah, is the one I want to leave you with, really, because we can talk about agreements and limits all day, and all of it is hollow without this specific thing as a foundation, and that is the powerful word of integrity. And look, not integrity as this moral concept, but rather as a functional one. Yeah, like meaning like you do what you said you were going to do, not because someone's watching, not because there's a consequence, not because you feel like it, but because your word is your bond, and your bond starts with yourself. Now, here's what came up in the circle that I think really hit home for a lot of us. And someone shared vulnerably, yeah, that they are incredibly committed to external obligations. Who can relate to that? Right? They are incredibly committed to their clients, to their work, to other people's needs. Like, they show up on time, they deliver, they're consistent. But when it comes to themselves, oh, that gym commitment, the vitamins, the daily practice, the creative project, those promises, oh yeah, those are broken constantly. And look, I'm sure most of us know this feeling. Like, this isn't new to us, right? This is a human trait. Like, humans, we do this, we experience this. And here's the truth behind it, you guys. At the end of the day, there's actually no external consequence when we break a promise to ourselves. Like, no one calls us out on it. No one shows up at the door. Like, think about it. If you have a coaching call, you have a client, you have an agreement, you have something, right? And you don't show up, oh, that person's most likely gonna like call you. They're gonna be like, hey, where you at? What's going on? However, when you don't go to that workout, like, your body isn't gonna call you and be like, hey, ring, ring, you didn't show up to the gym today. No, ain't no one gonna know, but you do. So here's what actually happens. Like, yeah, you may not get that phone call, you see, but every time we break a commitment to ourselves, even if it's a small one, we're actually destroying our own self-trust. Because what we're teaching our nervous system is I can't count on myself. I can't be reliable. And that fucks up everything. Because our confidence, our identity, our ability to show up committed in a relationship and in work, like all of that has to do with how we show up. Because somewhere deep inside, we know we can't even show up for ourselves. How am I really going to show up for others? From a genuine, authentic place. Now, real quick, I want to take you back to 2012. So it's 2012. I'm in coaching training. I'm learning how to become a coach. I'm learning how to hold space. I'm learning about distinctions. I'm learning about reframes. I'm learning about all of these different things, right? And I'm in this leadership program with Landmark. And for those who don't know, Landmark is probably one of the most intense personal development programs out there. Like, it's some real fucking work. And I'm in there, right? I'm in this leadership training, and I have a call scheduled with my coach. Right? And the call is scheduled for 2 p.m. And she tells me, I want you to call me at 2 p.m. I said, sure, yeah, whatever. I called her at 2:01. 1 minute. 1 minute late. Just one. She picks up and says, what happened? I'm like, what you mean? I called. She says, our call was at 2 p.m. You called at 2:01. So we're not going to have our call today. And she hung up. And I sit there staring at my phone like, what the fuck? Did that just really happen? Like, what the fuck? Did she just really cancel because of 1 fucking minute? I was low-key offended. Like, seriously, like, what the fuck? And I thought this was a bit extreme. Like, I thought this woman had to been, like, something was going on with her, right? Because that's just too much. Like that, you're exaggerating. That's just too much. That's too much. Like, you're going overboard. Yeah? And it really made me uncomfortable, which, by the way, you guys, whenever we get uncomfortable, that's usually a sign that something actually landed. Yeah? And so a couple of days later, when we spoke again, she said, listen, Sebastian, your word is your word. Not approximately, not mostly. Your word is your word. And when you said 2 p.m., I built my day around 2 p.m. The 1 minute, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you said something and you didn't do it to the T. And if you do that in the small things, what do you think you're most likely going to be doing in all of the big things? And the worst part is you won't even notice. And I'll tell you what, it made sense, especially as a young man aspiring to be trained as a leader. Like, I got it. You see, because she wasn't wrong. Like, I had to reflect, and I had been doing this like my entire life. I had been doing it in the big things. I had been doing it with myself constantly. My goals, I set them and I didn't follow through on. Habits I committed to and I abandoned. Declarations I made in my journal that I'd look back a couple months later and think like, what the fuck happened to that guy? So I started training myself, and I started treating my word like it was sacred, not as a performance, not to impress anyone, but because I wanted to be someone who could count on myself. And then once I started to play the role of a coach, yes, and I took that same standard into my practice. And I would tell my clients, look, I'm going to call you at 3 p.m. And at 3 p.m. exactly, I called. Every time. No exceptions. And you guys know what started to happen? My clients would comment on it. Wow, you're so punctual. Wow. Like, man, that's awesome. Like, you called right, like, on the dot. And I'm thinking, yeah, of course, good. That's the standard. Because here's what punctuality actually is. You ready for this? It's actually the most visible, most measurable expression of integrity, of doing what you said, of your word meaning something. Yeah? And the ripple effect was wild because when I showed up on time consistently, people started showing up for me differently. They took our work more seriously. They came prepared. They followed through, not because I lectured them about it, but because the standard was modeled. And that's the thing about integrity. It's contagious. And so is the lack of it. Now, this isn't a reason to like beat yourself up every time you're like 5 minutes late. Like, that's not what I'm trying to teach you here, right? That's not what I'm trying to share. The teaching really is, I want you to notice when your word starts costing you nothing. Like, notice when, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, becomes a reflex instead of your decision. Like, notice when the commitment to yourself are the first ones you sacrifice when life gets busy. Because that's the erosion. That's how self-trust dies. Like, not in one dramatic failure, but in a shit ton of small moments where we chose comfort over our own word, where it's just 1 minute, it's just this. That's not a big deal. But over time, it does. And it starts to compound. Yes? And every time we keep the commitment, especially the ones that no one's watching, especially when we don't feel like it, especially when like we don't really want to fucking do it and we're like, we just don't want to, but we gave our word. In those moments, we are literally building the version of ourselves we say we actually want to be. And look, you guys, that's not inspiration. That's architecture. But now, what about when we break our word, right? Because obviously, like we're human, we're gonna break it. Like, it's not perfect. Like, what do we do then, right? Like, what do we do? Because we all do it. So my invitation is, do not ignore it, right? I said I was gonna do something, I didn't do it. Fuck it. No, I said I was gonna do something. Let me bring awareness to this, right? The move is not just to say I'm sorry and move on. The move is to restore integrity. You look at the impact, you acknowledge it, you ask, hey, what do I need to do to make this right? And then you go and you fucking do it. Not to look good, but because your word means something. And if you don't take your broken word seriously enough to repair it, well, it'll mean less and less over time. Now, intention versus expectation. I know that we've talked about this before, and I want to revisit this here because I think it goes in this conversation, right? And you see, expectations live in the passenger seat. Yeah? So when we think of an expectation, it's in the passenger, like we're waiting, we're hoping, like, I hope they change. I hope she finally sees it. I hope he steps up. And when it doesn't happen, we're disappointed, resentful, stuck. Now, then there is intention. Intention is when you're sitting in the driver's seat, not passenger. No, you're in the driver's seat. And it's, I'm clear on what I want. I'm communicating it. I'm taking action toward it. And if it's not happening, I'm looking at what I can do differently, or am I making the decision? But the expectation is passive. Intention is active. And in the deepest layer of all of this, like, is when you start living from commitment to your own word, not as a strategy, not to impress others, but because it's who you actually are. Everything begins to shift. Your world starts to reflect your inner standards, and it starts to reflect it right back at you. Yeah. So the commitments you make and you keep to yourself, like, those are the ones that shape your identity, not your intentions, not your goals, your actions, what you actually do consistently, not when someone's watching you. Yes. But when you don't feel like it and you still are able to do it, when it's inconvenient and you still do it, that is who you are. And that is the work. So for this week, you guys, ready? For this week, what is one commitment to yourself you've been breaking? And more importantly, what's the story that you tell yourself about why you keep breaking it? Yeah? Now, is that story actually the truth? Right? Like, what would change in your life if you actually treated that commitment with the same seriousness as your most important external obligations? Write it. Name it. Make the commitment out loud if you can, and make it happen. here's a bonus. If you actually pull it off, send me an email at sebastian@letgoandhavefaith.com and tell me what happened. Yeah? So here's what we covered today, you guys. Agreement and commitment. They're not the same fucking thing. We got to uncollapse that shit. An agreement defines the playing field. The commitment is the energy we bring to it. Without a clear agreement, commitment has no target. Without true commitment, an agreement, they're just words. So we went over how every time we say yes when we really mean no, we're actually betraying ourselves. Like, our no, held with grace, is one of the most powerful things we can offer. That's what builds trust. It gives other people permission to hold on to their limits. And it protects the yes that we actually mean. Number 3, we also talked about integrity as a foundation. Do what you say. When you don't, you restore it. And the commitments you keep to yourself, especially the ones no one else sees, like those are going to either build or erode your self-trust. And self-trust is the root of everything, you guys. So you know the spark that has always been inside you. You remember who the fuck you are when you keep your commitments, especially when no one's watching. And that's where the spark either grows or dims. So choose to keep it burning. Now, if you want to do this work in community, if you want to have these type of conversations that were generated this week on our episode, like if you want to experience it live every week with people who are actually doing the work, well then join the inner circle. Like, this is where it happens. Monday calls, integration, accountability, real community. The link is in the show notes. Go check us out. Go to igniteselfmastery.com. And if you're ready to go deeper on the one-on-ones, if you want a container built around your transformation, Align is your private coaching program. So reach out. Let's talk about what that looks like. And lastly, Clean Planet Day. Yes, Clean Planet Day is coming on up. So it's the last Saturday of every month. We're out in communities. We're cleaning, connecting with nature, showing up for the planet. We just launched our new website, so go on there, create your event, or join a cleanup. Go visit us at www.wecleanplanet.com. Yeah, so until next time, you guys, keep igniting that spark within. Boom!